Oh,
No, but we could have.
I say it should all be online.
oh, is it?
Oh,
Maybe I did something wrong here.
oh no, there's no, unless it's this one.
Oh, yeah, there it is, okay. Okay, I guess I'm gonna call the special city council meeting to order. I guess first thing to do is approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Bruce Wolf, second by Maggie Bass to approve the agenda as presented for the special council meeting. If there's any other questions, additions, or anything? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. So Josh, I assume you're gonna take this?
Yeah, unless you want to. No?
No.
No, so yeah, as you all know, this is our first crack at the budget meeting. It looks like I accidentally left last year's date for our first crack at the budget meeting in the title of the memo. But as we kind of did last year, I'd like to kind of discuss the budget in pieces more as we kind of work much broader range and get us down there. We have certainly included all of the budget documents in the packet, so if you have any specific questions over anything, we can go over them. But in terms of what I had planned discussed tonight, I kind of had 4 major topics I wanted to look at that would help staff continue to shape the budget for us. The first one being kind of what goals do we have for this budget, kind of coming through this fall into next year. One of the big things that we talk about every single year of just kind of wage salary scale adjustment for staff. Insurance benefits that we know of right now. I say that we don't have all of them, the big one being health insurance, but we can start talking other stuff. And then just generally the CIP and what that looks like for city equipment for 2026. So do you have any glaring questions right off the bat for me? I can certainly jump into it.
No, I think let's proceed.
Okay, so first one, kind of what are some of our goals that we want to take out of this budget? And I know the city council certainly has this every single year, but the budget kind of helps guide what the city council is going to do in a very short term, aka 1 or 2 years. And staff has certainly used the visioning document as we try to put together projects and or initiatives that we try to work into the budget every year. But there might be other goals the city council has outside of specific projects. For example, maybe we really want to focus on parks or sidewalks or something like that. Or we know we've got a big spend coming, so we want to maybe put a little bit away. So along those lines, one item I think we certainly should consider, or at least have a conversation about, is the pending increase in the 2027 budget regarding police station debt. And while we don't have that exact number at this point, it is known there will most likely be an increase. We've seen that. So I guess one question that is worth having is this: does the city council want to do a partial increase this year to help kind of transition to that? If so, it would certainly be money that if you'd say put X dollars aside to help transition into that, you would then take those dollars, I would recommend, and move them into that police station to kind of help offset future levies total overall. But
Do we have any bonds going away in
So,
2026?
yeah, so one thing that we've been working on, I guess, you go, got a number of these, so let's see what I got.
Thank you.
Anyone here want to look at these? Well, debt service levy. You have extra, yeah. So that's kind of looking at our current levy amounts that we have coming up year over year, just kind of trying to graph out what we know of. You see a big jump in 26. That's a combination of the police station debt coming online, as well as then when our CIP for this year, the debt levy that we know or likely will know coming online for that. That's why you see that big jump there for next year. And then I know working with Robin, we worked through formulas to kind of assume, hey, we have finished total reconstruction, but there will likely be mill and overlay projects coming up year over year. And so we worked and assumed a $1.5 million mill and overlay project into this year over year. As you can see, we do, as I said, have that spike for collect 2027. And then you start to see stuff roll off year over year over year, some of that larger debt. Of note, I know that people have talked about it, that levy year 28 going to 29 is when the fire station rolls off, which is why you see that $285,000 roll off that year. So I believe this is what you asked for, correct, Mr. Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can you just clarify, Josh, on that 2627, the 1,777,000, how much is police and how much is CIP in the increase there?
I believe the police was what, roughly 700?
Yeah, 697 or something, I think.
I believe in these estimates, it was roughly 700,000.
Okay.
And yeah, I think Robin's looking it up real quick.
And just to review the potential bond, how do you see that actually happening from this day forward?
As in,
What has to take place from now that we approve that enabling resolution?
yep, so now that that's approved at the next EDA meeting, they will have their pre-sale report, similar to when we have done it, and approve a sale date, and then direct Eller's staff to move forward. That sale date will likely then happen at the next EDA meeting, coming after that in early October, and then the bonds will be sold, or we'll receive the cash shortly thereafter.
So in that scenario, then we'd still be looking at funding the first interest payment on the bond issue with cash.
Correct. We
No principal or interest due in 26, or would there be a second half?
I think there may be a second half principal due. We're still working through with Ellers to see exactly what that would look like. And I know exactly how that would be funded, whether we would look at potentially using further cash to fund that, or I know we certainly, and this is where the conversation that we have already had with Ellers of how do people generally pay for these. Some cities certainly pay for, they levy in advance for the first payment of the year, if that makes sense. So that way they have the cash sitting in the bank when February rolls in. Other cities will basically say, hey, we certainly have the carrying capacity to carry it, and so we'll just levy in the given year of the payment. So you'd make a payment in February and August, but your tax dollars would roll in June and December. They certainly see it both ways. The way we currently do street projects is we levy 6 months in advance.
So this first number, the 731 number, that might change depending on what we find out that second half payment due on the potential bond issue.
It could go up if that's how we want to do that bond issue.
Okay.
And I know Robin and I are also working through a lot of the current bonds that are out there. If you remember right, last year we had that one that ended, and so it's possible that we could roll some of that back and see some play in there to maybe absorb some of those other bonds.
When are we gonna get that number? When do you anticipate? You're working with Ehlers, I get it.
I would hopefully in the next 2 weeks to 4 weeks before that preliminary levy gets set, because I know we certainly want to make sure you guys have the answers of where that lands with that exact number, as well as the options we have as to whether we maybe even want to see if we have extra cash to carry amounts here and there.
Yeah, I'd like to know where that cash comes from too. I mean,
Yes.
we talked about this for about 10 minutes and there's gaps all over the place, so
Nope, I get that. So if you remember at that first interest payment with cash we discussed coming from money that we have setting aside currently in the, it's in the general fund, but it's kind of earmarked for facility maintenance and or upgrades. It's the same cash that we ended up using for the parks facility. So that was the first interest payment, as we discussed using cash for that so that we wouldn't have to bond for it.
that was the 396 or whatever, right?
Correct, yeah.
Well, I think as we move forward, we're getting more clarity on how hopefully this will all fall together. And we will know more 2 weeks from now than we know today.
Correct.
But that seems to be an important number to understand the second half of 2026, what our obligation might be, and then how we're gonna stick it in the budget.
Yep.
Yeah, of course. So Bruce, I think this goes back to your question and possibly answers that one. So their proposed first interest payment would be August 1 of 2026, and then the next payment would be February 1, 2027.
Okay, well, that
Yep.
clarifies it right away, then we
Yep.
won't have any
Just
debt service on the police station next year. Because we're paying it with cash.
Correct.
Correct.
But to Josh's point, talking about when to levy for that, if we wanted the cash sitting there waiting for that February payment, or if we wanted to receive our levy money from the county in May or June to go back and pay that payment in February, which isn't uncommon either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, speaking to Ellers, cities do it both ways.
So in the calendar year, you end up funded, but you're using your reserves until the county payment comes in. And then the 2027 estimated amount, principal and interest, both payments, would be $750,918.
That's based on,
Just what Ellers was using right now, based
Okay.
on the debt service schedule, without, of course, having gone to a bond sale yet.
okay. Thank you.
So I guess going back to that, just that question I posed out there, considering, is there, is there thoughts on some sort of transition period? As I said, if we did some sort of transition period, I would highly recommend then using that money straight back into the police station debt payoff fund, so it is basically getting levied for what it is getting paid for.
Well, one of the considerations, I guess, is we have what I feel is, it seems like an appropriate amount, if not more than enough, hopefully, that's set aside for contingencies that we talked about. Now, we've already used some of that in the tank issue, but it's not substantial. I'm not aware of any other changes during construction that's causing any additional overages.
So I will say at this point, and I actually hadn't had a chance to talk to you about it yet, we did learn very late last week that the contents of that tank turned out to have a much higher lead concentration than is allowed, and so they have to find another place to dump it, basically, than here locally through DEMCON. And we don't have any idea what that would possibly look like yet in terms of like the cost on dumping that. So I don't know what that bill is yet, but at this point, no. Other than that bill, we haven't really had any other, I guess I would say, major items necessarily come up.
Well, be that as it may, and you took some of the spirit out of my comments. We had talked about the money that we'd be doing in-house for some of the contingency, which included the ambulance fund and other funds from improvements and things like that. If we're able not to use it all, obviously, then we have that cash to use towards that payment, the first payment or part of that. Because the February payment would be roughly half the principal plus the interest, I would imagine, or something.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, what that would look like.
But in any event, there may be options that we have that become more clear to us in the next few weeks. And we might have better understanding what contingencies would be available to us. But in this budget process, I would like us to consider too, whether we need an ambulance fund at all anymore, because now it's been regulated to just a rental payment. Now, so I'm not sure why we need to keep any cash in it myself.
No, I mean, that's fair. I think an argument could have been made prior to this that should something happen, repairs need to be made to the building, they'd be pulled out of that. But at this point, it has become such a small portion of the building that I think there is a very solid argument that an ambulance fund isn't necessarily needed anymore.
Do we charge them more than, I mean, because there's no, well, there is some debt on that left, but do we charge north?
We charge north, what is it, roughly $1,400 and change, less than $1,500 a month, I believe.
Okay,
I mean, it's certainly not substantial in any ways in terms of
right.
what, we also haven't had to put much into there. We put very little. That fund has grown by small amounts, at least since I've been here.
Don't they pay utilities too? Or no?
I believe, do they pay a portion of utilities?
I'd have to look at.
Oh, yeah.
For certain.
They do. So I guess outside of a potential, we'll say, transition year to the full debt service levy, was there anything else necessarily that any city council members wanted to focus on or make a goal of this budget cycle?
Well, obviously, to me, it's, the lower we have to levy, is obviously better. I mean,
Yes.
I think we're at this initial bond thing, it was 7%, I think, based on all your assumptions.
Correct, yeah, based on all the assumptions, kind of in an all-in type situation. So you guys could kind of see where the various departments, feel they need to be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I got here, there were times that, stuff was included, and I know some comments came from, well, why, if this is such a need, why haven't we heard about this yet at this point? So, I make sure to kind of try to keep the budgets intact as much as possible, so that way you can see that if the planning department's in need of something, but we can't fund it maybe this year or the next year, it has been on the list and we have talked about it.
Just to clarify, when the fire fire portion comes off, is it exactly or close to just under 300,000 specifically for that? Or is it something less than 300?
I think it's 276 or something like that, or.
I feel like it's very close to this number here.
The
but
difference.
The 285.
That
Yeah.
last,
It's very close, it's not much different.
The last payment in 2028, principal and interest, is 374, 307.
Well, I'll just make the comment that
Yeah.
it would be, in my mind, if we could mitigate that to some point to get to that point, seems like a nice idea, but to get away from that hump that's there.
What are you saying?
from what I can tell, you're basically saying if we can try to level off the hump a little bit.
But we have such a drop off at that point, or I should say a material drop off from 100,000,006 to 1,000,003.
Mm-hmm.
We could even out or reduce the extent of it in 2027, 28 to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Would be nice. So if we're putting money aside either through debt service for the couple of years to try to mitigate it or something to help it to not have such a jump up and then a reduction.
Mm-hmm.
I think in practice, the city, or at least I think we've tried to not have big spikes and big drops.
Right.
So that's to help the budget. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts with a lot of other capital needs. Other things have to be considered too, but.
Well, is there a number that anyone has in their mind? Is it,
Well, if we're gonna follow Bruce's philosophy on that and get rid of the caps, why are we paying down that initial debt in 25 and 26 or in 26? you said to balance out, so we don't have big drops and we don't have big humps like we do here. But 25 is a pretty big drop because we're throwing $400,000 out of our checking account at the prepayment of it. Almost 400, 396 or whatever it is, which is giving us a false look at the true ramifications of that police station, in my mind.
So Sean, maybe to your point, if you look at the, kind of the tax levy summary, what page is that on, you guys? It is on page 7 of that packet. The last few years, what the city council has done is basically taken $1 million, and the difference between $1 million and what we debt levy, we have been putting into the equipment fund. This year, I believe we are, I have to go back, don't remember the exact number, proposing to only spend about 210,000 of that equipment, and so there would be $50,000 of that equipment fund that would basically remain in that fund for a future equipment. I know we've talked, hopefully, once that fund kind of gets itself established, that we avoid the large spikes in debt service levy, and so that fund in particular is hoping to capture some of that, at least as we look at equipment, knowing that we have a fire truck coming up likely in a few years that will take as much of that fund as we're probably willing to give it. But
On that page, then, the equipment facility levy, is that, can you kind of elaborate what that is? 268,135.
yes, so if you look, the difference between $1 million and the debt service levy, as proposed right now, is 268,135. So
That's what you're assuming, just setting aside.
that would be just setting aside. Now, this year for equipment spending, we do have, it's 240,000 of that is getting used. So there would be a small amount that would then be basically just remain in that fund that would not get used, but would likely get used, like I said, in the next couple of years as different equipment needs roll in for that.
So I'm not sure if I understood you correctly. 240 of that would be actually levy for debt payment?
Correct, yeah, so we in this instance, we levy for 268, and then when we go to buy equipment next year, we would draw out of that 268, and right now, those proposed prices are right at about 240.
So the 268 is not, none of that would be used for debt repayment?
Correct, that'd be used for
That's
purchasing
just setting
equipment.
aside cash?
Setting aside cash, correct.
Okay.
And yeah, and in this case, 240 of it is planned to be used in 26.
In the same year?
In the same year. So there would be roughly $28,000 right now unused in there.
I got a question, Josh, on page 23. Where does the average market value, where do you get those numbers from? And I see that this one, those are Scott County only, is that correct?
Correct. So Scott County provides this to all of their cities. I've asked LeSueur County for it, and I don't know all that goes into this. LeSueur County has not provided this great of a detail, basically on residential impacts. So the way it works on the Scott County side is if you know that the value of your property is going up by we'll say 5% when you get your tax statement. So the value of my property went up 5%. Well, with the current proposed levy, you would know that your city taxes would taxable change, net difference, that number would go up roughly 10%, and that's due to basically how the changing of the values happens. Does that make sense? So if you can think of our taxes as one giant pie, and that, we'll just use $1 million because it's really easy. I know that number is low, but it's just an easy number. If the value of your property of that $1 million, or the value of all the property in New Prague is $1 million, and your value is $10,000. So we just have easy. That means your value, you make up 1% of all the value of the land in the city. Now, under current taxing code, that means you would pay roughly 1% of the city taxes. And I say roughly because commercial pays higher than residential, multifamily pays higher than single family. So what this is trying to break down is based on the valuation changes on the Scott County side, how does the valuation change of your property directly relate to what you would see as a actual tax change to you as a taxpayer? Within this graph, it basically says under the proposed change, if the value of your property did not change at all, you can trace that all the way over to the side where it says the net difference percentage change. If the value of your property did not change at all, under the current proposal and budget right here, your taxes would go up about 2%. The city taxes would go up 2%. Do you see me? Do you tracking there, Sean?
Yes, I see that, yes.
Okay, so I tried to take all of those numbers and say, okay, how can we try to make an average out of this? And so we know the value changes. We know the number of affected properties, and this is where I took and made that little chart right underneath there. Number of affected properties, and basically weighted value changes across. We can certainly get into the math if you want to, and mathed it all out to where the average taxable property value in New Prague is that little yellow box. If you take all the residential properties, the average property is valued at $323,881, and that exact average person would see their taxes go up 5.69%. And again, that is very much an average. So those with a higher taxable value would go up a little more probably. Those with a lesser taxable value would actually go up less than that.
That's just the tax impact on the value of your home.
So that would be your tax. So if my home was valued at $323,000 and I lived in Scott County, then if this was passed, my taxes, city portion of my taxes would go up 5.69%.
That's an average. That doesn't,
Yeah. So,
your house could have a swimming pool or something that makes it much more valuable.
correct. Yeah. So yeah. If you had a more valuable property, but it's based entirely off of the change in your value, and so if you were included in one of these 388, we'll say you're this one property whose value actually dropped from somewhere between 5 and 10%. That person under this proposal would see their taxes, the city portion of their taxes, drop 6.7%. If you were one of those 380 people who saw somewhere between a 0 and a 5% drop, your taxes would roughly drop 0.9 or 1% based on this proposal. So it's all based on your portion of the pie and how your portion of the pie changes against everybody else's. So if my property goes up $20,000, but all my neighbor's property goes up $40,000, they're gonna see a different value change or percentage change than I necessarily would, because they're now taking up a larger portion of the pie. Minnesota is renowned for having one of the most complicated property tax systems in the whole United States. A lot of people pay this is the mill rate and the value of your property, this is what you pay in taxes, whereas Minnesota's is based off of your value versus your neighbor's.
Right, and that's where my concern comes in, is that it's easy to hide stuff in that number. If you just look at, and this is, I'm making the assumption that this is specific to New Prague, not a countywide average.
That is correct. So, yeah, they put this out so we can actually pull this number on anybody in this, across the county.
Okay.
But the 12 million, is that total New Prague? Or is that just Scott County?
So that net tax capacity is, New Prague. So 12,408,298 is our current estimated tax capacity for 2026, based on numbers from Scott and LeSueur County.
Yes, that's the total.
That's total
Yes.
for just, but it's just for New Prague.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to figure out is why it's so top heavy as opposed to where there's actually a decrease.
And I think that,
According to this, there's, the affected properties are 1483, is that correct?
correct.
Okay. So 381, even though there's 4 categories with
Yep.
zeros, but those 381 out of that 1483 will actually see a decrease of about 1%.
Correct. So the county has their estimated value on property, and for 381 of them, they are dropping the value on that particular property.
Right. So then essentially 1,100 homes, 380 will see a 1% decrease. 1,100 other homes will see anywhere from 2 to 20%. Is that correct?
Yes, so that is based off the increased value of their homes, they'll see a larger increase of their portion of the city taxes.
And if I looked at the percentage of the total, the 508 and the properties and the 540 properties, so 1,000 where the majority of it is, which is what, about 71%, according to this, we'll see an increase between the 5 and almost 11%.
Correct. According to that graph, yes.
And we can't get this information on the LeSueur side.
Yes, I'm continuing to see if I can, convince the county administrator. Like I said, I don't know what kind of work goes into this. And maybe it's a lot that many years ago, Scott County did all the work and now it's as easy as plug and play, but, that is something I continue to bring up with not only my counterparts of the cities, but the county.
Well, we had our commissioner here, so we should have asked him. To see if we can get that information. I don't recall ever seeing it in my 14 years of looking at budgets.
I know I've included
LeSueur
this the
County
last couple of
valuation.
years.
Not
It's always
sure.
been, yeah, it's always
No.
been Scott,
This
right?
information?
Yeah,
This tax comparison, I think I've included this particular graph
This
the
one
last,
here?
Yes,
I've seen it ever since I've been.
the last couple.
but not for LeSueur.
not LeSueur
never
County.
LeSueur.
Yeah, not
Right.
Never, no,
Right.
it's never been in LeSueur County. I agree with that. Since 2010 or 11, when we were started, Sean, it's never been LeSueur County.
Right.
So are we potentially getting a little off topic here because your intent for today was to go through?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, any of this stuff is certainly, it's in there, so we can certainly have discussions. I'd like everyone to understand what's in front of them, so, we can certainly think about potential goals, like I said, or if we wanna do some sort of, small debt service bump just to start that transition to the higher one. But that is not an information I necessarily need by today. As a reminder, we've got to basically set our top end by the end of September, our preliminary not to exceed levy. So, after that, we have to find space, so.
So I'm gonna assume that all the departments heads have done their part, that's in here,
Correct.
their wants, not so much their needs.
Correct. Well, and so I do know that, they are very good about looking through and we need this stuff, we don't need this stuff. I know, especially if you look at our CIP stuff, Matt is basically constantly saying, we can get another year out of this. We can get another year out of this to try to trim some of those equipment needs back, because many of those are our largest single spends in a year, so.
Well, I thought we weren't gonna do that though, because I remember bringing that exact thing up last year. And I just wanted to flip 2 pieces of equipment, which would have saved us 200,000 and a 1% off of our 11% increase or 10 point, whatever it was last year. and was like, oh, no, we can't do that. Well, now I just wanna make sure that we're not burying things to make the police station look affordable.
No, I mean,
As opposed to when we had it budgeted, when we laid this out 12 years ago and mapped out 25 years of equipment needs, that we're not pushing things back to give us a false front line, and then 5 years from now, a whole different council might be in a situation where all of a sudden the equipment needs spike because things are breaking down right and left.
I'm trying to explain this to you now for 5 years in a row. I've never, my entire career, have ever brought anything to you guys for a want. It's always been something that we need. And I've made it very clear that during this whole process of the capital, we are constantly moving things up or back throughout the whole process. So if you see it in front of you right now, that is me removing 3 F-150s already. I pushed those back farther. And there's equipment that I moved up in the past. So it's not be like, oh, this is our 25-year program. Let's all just, this is what we live by. And now that there's a police station, let's try to hide this from the council. That would never,
No, I'm
I mean, I hope you would never, I can't believe you actually said that, but
not
we would
implying that at
never
all, Matt.
hide equipment and try to push it back to hide a levy. I mean, we would never bring equipment to you unless we absolutely 100% needed it.
So could you get me a copy of what the total is of what you push back then this year? You must have that if you look at that and review that.
Absolutely.
So I would like to see the original plan from last year that might have had it mapped out, and then what you pushed, and then I'd just like to see what that total is.
I would love to give it,
Okay.
and I hope you will
Yeah.
speak about that at a council
I
meeting too.
most certainly will, Matt. And you know what? Don't take it personally. These are legitimate questions that I'm asking, and I can't help it that I might be, not only me, but a lot of taxpayers that I talk to are always a little leery of where the detail is and where the things could be manipulated and whatever else. So,
I take offense to you saying we're hiding things. That's what I said.
I didn't, did I say hiding?
you did
Yes.
say hide.
Okay, if I did,
So-
I apologize.
So I will say, Sean, we've tried to be very open. We mentioned tonight the first payment's likely gonna be $750,000-ish, around there. That being said, as I've discussed, we're also trying to find ways to absorb that without just tacking on $750,000. And so some of that does come down to moving equipment around. That doesn't mean we're trying to hide it or make it disappear. If you would prefer that we just tack on $750,000, we can certainly do that. But I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job and my department heads wouldn't be doing their jobs if we didn't say, okay, where can we try to not spend to absorb that a little bit so that it isn't as big of a hit to taxpayers?
Well, and again, I'll go back to my original point, because I do remember last year wanting to flip a few things to shave some of that off. Just 2 pieces of equipment that would have saved, I think it was $220,000, would have saved us another percentage off of our total tax levy. And was told, no, we can't do that. And I'm pretty sure that the equipment probably would have made it another year. So I think it's a legitimate question to ask that we can't squeeze out another, I mean.
I think it's certainly fair to ask.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's fair to look at, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'll say, let's look at this dump truck. I'm just gonna say it because there's nothing in front of me.
Yep.
Can we get another year out of this dump truck? And when I look at Matt and Matt goes, no, like I truly don't think we can get another year out of that dump truck, then the answer becomes yes, it would be nice to shave another $200,000 off, but we don't know if that dump truck's gonna make it another year. And if we don't have some plan in place to replace it, now we're just stuck without, and it likely gets used for plowing snow and what else, and so we're one short. And so I know last year when that question was asked, we looked at the equipment in question, and it was probably determined that no, like in our professional opinion, we cannot make it another year with that particular equipment.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you do ask those questions. I just, like I said, we're just pushed back 3 F-150s, so I'm just curious on,
It's no different than I know that initially, Steve had one of the fire trucks, I don't know which one it was, on deck, I believe it was for this year. And he looked at it and said, no, I think we can get another 3 years out of this. And so why would we want to spend the money now when we have a usable vehicle? So,
Again, I just want to reiterate that I think we're getting a little into the weeds when tonight's meeting is to take a look at some of what Josh has laid out for our subsequent budget sessions. This happens annually, and I get a little frustrated at times, and granted, at times, we do need to get into the weeds. But like any meeting that any corporation would have, it's nice to have an agenda, go through the agenda within a certain time limit so that we are not going off in tangents and not addressing what's on the agenda, knowing that we're going to be able to address some of the details in subsequent meetings. I just get a little frustrated.
Well, my question would be okay, so we're at 6.98%, correct, at this budget, with all your assumptions?
Yes.
And what if I said, how do we get to 5%?
I would say, I would like you to let me talk to my department heads and see where we can make cuts at
Yeah,
that point.
I'm just wondering how the process, I mean,
So that is how I would like this process to work, that if you guys say we can't go higher than 5, then let me go get to that number. And it may take cutting some stuff out that we professionally recommend going forward with, and I would certainly tell you that hey, we highly recommend that this particular piece of equipment be purchased because we don't know if the one can make it, but if you absolutely need to get to 5%, then that is the one to take out, or however that conversation may play out.
because I think that's, Maggie, to your point, I think that's what a board would do, is say, okay, we're gonna, whatever it takes, I don't care where you get it from, but this is what I want. Or this is what the board wants.
Right, and
I may
then-
have one thing, you may have a different number, but,
But then get to it in subsequent meetings and understand what we're getting to. So it's just, to me, it doesn't make sense right now to talk about the tax levy when we haven't even we haven't shaved things.
So I guess,
because you're building, you have 4% for salaries and that, but we don't have a
correct.
clue on what it's really gonna be.
Correct, so that was gonna kind of be our next conversation, of letting you know that in the current budget as it stands, I have proposed a 4% increase, for a couple of reasons. One, as we looked at COLA, trying to track with inflation differences from one year to the next, and I know we had this conversation last year that depending on what statistics you look at or consider within your cost of, your inflation numbers, it could certainly change. But just in 26 here from January to June, which was the last data I had when I did this memo, the CPI had raised from about somewhere nationally of about 2.1%, Midwest as a region about 2.3%, and which I guess if you would double it based on the being half of the year, you're looking at anywhere from 4.2 to 4.6%. Nationally and regionally. Now, I know that there's certainly uncertainty in predicting where it's all going, and 4% kind of just felt like a solid estimate and a starting point for that. I also included, so there is a graph in there that is kind of detailing the historic COLA summaries. For you guys, that would be on a much lower page.
Is that 28?
Yes, page 28. So looking at Social Security, in January, they estimated the COLA for 2026 was gonna be 2.1. I've already read reports from back in July that were mentioning that at that point, they were estimating an increase of actually 2.6 instead of 2.1 for Social Security. I know that number kind of moves up until the fall when they formally set that into place. And as I said, I kind of graphed all of that data for you to see on page 28. If you kind of look at that, the yellow line kind of signifies New Prague on each of those graphs. The first one over the last 10 years, and the second one since the last compensation study that was done. Over the last 10 years, the city has tracked pretty close with both the U.S. and the all three, U.S., Midwest, and Social Security. It certainly jumped out in front of it from there 2019 through 21, and then from about 21 through 23, those other three certainly caught back up. If you look at it since the last comp study, which is kind of where the city, in my mind, should have reset the bar with the market around itself. Inflation and Social Security have out-tracked the city's wage adjustments over the last 5 years. So I just kind of wanted to share that data with some of my reasoning as to coming out to this 4% for that particular piece. The second reason, to your point, Mr. Mayor, we aren't really sure where the comp study is going to land, and I don't know or how much the city then is going to ultimately adopt as much as what comes out. And so not only have we put that 4% in there, there also, if you look in the contingency line item, that the city usually puts $25,000 away as a something always comes up line item. I have put some extra funds into there. I don't know off the top of my head exactly where that stands.
After other adjustments we've known since, it'll be about 50,000.
So there's about an extra 25,000 sitting in contingency right now, not knowing what could happen. So obviously, that money could come out and not be used, and that would drop the levy $25,000 today. But that's sitting in there not knowing if it would potentially be needed for wage adjustments, depending on what comes out of that compensation study. So that's how I currently landed on 4%. But I'm certainly open to conversations and wanting to hear what you all want to see within the budget the next time.
Go ahead.
I know this is always a very sensitive subject and it's not meant to be derogatory to any staff or employees, but just looking at big picture items, and that's how I tend to look at it. But my placeholder for the budget would be 3%, not 4%. It's kind of, and I'm just base it on where inflation is now, where we expect it to be next year. Information and data that I've gleaned from league information from some of the budget work that was done this summer by other Class 4 cities. And here again, I'm kind of wanting us to think about comparing ourselves to Class 4. I understand we have obviously problems, challenges with larger cities, Lakeville, Apple Valley, Shakopee, that take our staff from us, but that's the nature of how this works. So my information that I'm getting is that a lot of the Class 4 cities are budgeting around a 3%, and we tend to maybe track but not follow inflation. Obviously, there's years we've been way above it, and years we've been way below it, and we tend not to, like most cities, we do not follow spikes typically. So that's kind of what my perception of it is. But the other issue that I think we need to be mindful of is not just this percentage, but what's our cost of compensation totally from the city? And I know that maybe not last year, but the year before you gave us some information on that. But I believe that we should be tracking that because that's an important factor way above as far as how much we're spending on issues based on the size or what the residents are asking us to provide. And we gotta keep mindful of that because that's the issue, that we have limited resources. We're tied to property tax levies and LGA. And as you mentioned, we don't have a big bump up in LGA this year, so we don't have additional resources. That's my comment as far as that.
Was there any other immediate comments, I guess?
I mean, I think as a first pass, I think it was very well put together. I think you guys put a lot of thought in it, being a finance guy myself, it's always, okay, now it's time to sharpen the pencil. I understand that can be done after September. I mean, we have to come up with an initial number, and obviously you always want to be a little conservative in
Yes,
that.
so I know generally my recommendation is always to even be a percent or two above where you think it might be, hoping that you never have to go up. I mean, it's there, it's basically a ripcord in case of emergency type situation. But that, say if we had a 7% number, we say, okay, we're gonna set it at 8, knowing that 7% is already our number, and we're gonna hopefully keep working down from that, but we don't want something to surprise us type of situation is usually how I personally like to approach the levy.
Well, and I think we've done that in the past years, that's a prudent way of doing it. But we're not here tonight to set the preliminary, we're here tonight to say we'd like to see this number get to potentially a lower number, and then have you come back with recommendations on that.
Were there, I guess, other thoughts, on the wage salary adjustment that I have put in there? I know Bruce had mentioned he'd like to see something closer to 3%.
Well, if it's just a 4% COLA, that doesn't take into consideration the full compensation package, all of the other components. So I think 4% is a little on the rich side. I would agree with Bruce that I'd like to see something a little closer to 3.
Okay, is that something you'd like to see before the preliminary levy? Or, like I said, not only was I having it in here kind of tracking inflation, but not knowing where the comp study may go, that'd potentially give us a little more wiggle room than a 3% would. I guess as of right now, they're still saying they'd like, the consultants would like to see that wrapped up in October.
Which, which
Who
is,
knows whether that's
that's
actually gonna
late.
happen there, but.
Yeah.
That's where I was hopefully, like I said, between this percentage and these, even if small, $25,000 in contingency, was hoping to try to catch some of that if I could. Like I said, we can always come down if we need to, but going up is much more difficult.
Robin, what is the difference? What's the 1% on that? Come on, you know that top of your head. I'm just kidding.
That's what I dream about at night. No, while other questions come up, I can quickly come up with what that
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, Bruce is, we got 4 in there.
Yep.
3, what would that do?
talk amongst yourselves.
That's really to the point I'm trying to get to. We don't have to know if it's 3, 2.5, but if we know 1% is
Is
X
how
number
many
of dollars,
Yeah.
A percentage point, we know,
Yep.
is it, what percentage of the whole budget is
Right.
just the labor number, not the benefits part, just the labor number.
Yep.
That, then we can just sit and say, okay, if we're trying to gain X and then we know, okay, labor, if we go from 4 to 3, we gained, so many.
So many dollars, yeah.
As we're talking amongst ourselves, also, also noting if there's any changes in full-time equivalents, are we talking about reductions in staff maintaining or increasing?
Yep, so
Nice
that,
to know as we-
yep, yeah, so there is one position that's been worked into this budget that we don't currently have. Was it a year ago, Matt, that we may have had that switch? We had an employee that was split between the utilities and, streets, half-time for both. Utilities had a person move on, and so that opened up a position. Well, that half-time position applied for the full-time position over there, which basically vacated a half position on both sides. And both staffs said, hey, are we able to operate a half position down? I know looking at it, I know talking to Matt, he goes, we could use a position. And so worked into this budget is a half position, or not half, it's half parks, half streets. And so we call it a full public works position that kind of split between the two departments. Along those lines, I know one of the things that I would like to see out of the comp study is kind of elimination of a parks and or streets. They both do a lot of work in both, and just creating a public works position. And so along those lines, there's, we'll call it one public works maintenance worker that's not currently on staff that is worked into this budget.
So that's 2 additional position, or full-time equivalents?
One.
One. We'll have to-
Under the current makeup, it'd be half, 20 hours a week in parks, 20 hours in streets.
Right, but that's all general fund.
Correct, so that would be a general.
Previously, it was utilities and general fund.
Previously, it was half general fund, half utilities.
Right, so it didn't, now it's gonna be 100%.
Now it'd be 100%, yeah, so in theory,
Yeah,
you're
so if-
picking up you're picking up half of a FTE.
Yeah,
We're-
because
we're
utilities
picking
is
up a
paid
full-
by Simple.
Correct. Yeah, utilities is paid by
Simple.
utility, well,
No,
not all utilities are, some of them are. This was a water position.
Oh.
Um,
well, just so I guess
Yep.
I'm a little confused. Previously it was split, so the general fund was only affected by half a position. We had one half a position. Now, and that was a year and a half ago.
Correct, so yeah, so
A year ago.
that half a position was then
Left.
gone, yeah, and basically moved over there. And so when that happened, you had a half position on both sides that was going unfilled.
Was it filled last year, half of it?
I don't know if
Or
that
this year, I'm
I don't know
sorry.
if that position on the utility side has yet been filled. I'd have to talk to
Okay.
Bruce. I don't believe it has.
So this year, was it on the park side?
Yeah, that water.
Yeah.
What's that? So what was that?
This year on the park side, was it filled?
No, it was
Okay.
not. So that has gone unfilled, and that's where we're talking with Matt. They could use the extra body both in the parks and the streets, and so that you would get that,
Right.
so
And
yeah,
all
so
I'm-
it's picking up half
Right.
half an FTE.
And all I'm trying to understand is how does it affect the budget from this year to last year? And in my understanding, what you just said is that we would have one full-time new compensation
Correct,
next year that we did not have this year.
correct.
Okay. Just one then.
Just one.
Okay. The other
And
public.
unless I'm wrong, I don't believe that one, correct, from everybody? Yes.
Okay.
What's the date that we have to set the preliminary?
End of September is like, is it the 30th or, yeah, 30th? Usually we set it at the second meeting, in September, but if for some reason we are certainly still hashing this out, you could call a special meeting that last week of September to set it.
Or you could just,
Yeah, traditionally, we've set it
give
at the
them a
council
number.
meeting, the second meeting of September. Because the deadline is the end of September.
right,
So,
but
one,
the final one doesn't, it be approved till December.
right. When is our next budget meeting?
So my thought would be to having another discussion after the next council meeting.
Which
So-
is,
Which, that would be the meeting that we would talk a real, like, this is where we want our number to land.
So September 2nd.
September, is that second?
yeah, because the first is Labor Day.
Personally, I think we should have just a separate budget meeting.
Well, we could,
In the past, we've ended up, all of a sudden, we have a long, regular meeting, and then everybody's tired and everybody wants to get home at 8 o'clock or whatever, and we're trying to start a budget meeting. And it
Well,
just seems to me,
now that, we could always have a meeting in a couple weeks or so, or before, in August, and then handle the Josh's review. And then the second half could, we could do a budget meeting if you wanted to do that rather than wait till,
I will say the closer that budget meeting comes, the more scramble we are to make any changes on this side coming out of this meeting. But we can try to make whatever work.
well, I don't think we're, I think, at least, I like some of your assumptions. Some of the questions have been answered. I think knowing what 1% on the labor is, and then, and I noticed that we still were giving money to the golf course, like 17,000. I'm like, I don't see why would we need to give the golf course any money.
Correct, yeah, so we've just been walking that down the last few years.
Yeah, I know, but did
and
we
so-
actually give them anything this year
Believe
yet?
it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's like 41,000 is what we were planning on giving them this year.
But has it been given?
It's not usually till, well,
I'd have to see if they do a monthly allocation or if we do it at year end.
Yeah, I don't, I,
We haven't done the full lump sum yet. At
Yeah.
the very most we've done. a
I'll have to
partial
check. I don't remember seeing it in the last financials, so.
It might be a year end.
So I guess as we continue to wait on that.
Because that would
one
be a thing,
COLA
is
difference.
if the golf course is cash flowing, do they really need the 41,000 this year? You know, we could move that to a contingency. You know, I guess that's, I didn't know, I thought after there was that issue with the tax levy thing in whatever year that was, that the golf course wasn't getting any more money, because I never budget for it. So
It was like 26,000, I thought, for whatever
Thought we went
reason
down
it
to
sticks in my head.
21,000
but-
and this year was gonna
Well,
be
this year is only like 17.
26 was gonna be 14,000.
Oh, it was 26, right?
I thought in 2025, we're at like 21,000.
Yeah, I think so.
29,000, okay. And then I thought we were dropping to like 14 or 17,000.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but I mean, that's certainly money that we could look at putting in the
I mean,
contingency.
it's
instead of
not a
the
lot,
golf
but
course.
it's like, I mean, if they're cash flowing, I don't see.
And then that was kind of the purpose of the walk back anyway, is to
Right.
try to get them off of that, so.
What are they sitting on in cash? Well, that's, we can go over that. I don't wanna.
Well, what they're sitting on in cash doesn't matter, because
Well, it does. It's taxpayer money that we could use to move somewhere else.
not when you,
I mean, it's not really
when you have
tax,
4 months that they don't have any revenue, you gotta have cash.
Yeah, but I don't, are they flush with cash? Or they're, you know, we got a lot of cash that sits in the EDA too, and yeah, there's projects coming down in the future, but I mean, it still sits there. And to your point,
But
even,
but at the end of the year, they're gonna be negative on their income
yeah,
statement,
if
but
they need,
cash flow.
what I'm saying is if they need 50,000 to get them through those 4 months when nobody's working and whatever else, I
Right.
got it, but they might be sitting on 125, that opens up 75,000 that maybe we
Well,
can
but
touch
you gotta
into
remember,
some of it.
they give a $50 spiff if you pay early, so that they can cash flow through the spring.
Right, Chuck, I'm just saying, I'm just
You
looking
just
at
can't,
other-
you just
I-
can't take that money when someone prepaid, and then all of a sudden, oh, you take the money, and then they go, well, we can't.
No, this isn't the prepayment. I thought there might be sitting on cash throughout the year from individual play and whatever else.
Well, they're sitting in cash, but
Yeah, I just wanna know what that number is. I'm not saying we're gonna starve them and they can't
no,
make their
I'm just saying
bills,
that
but
there's,
maybe there's
you
more
can
money
start
in there.
in, November
Right,
through April, their revenue stream is very low.
right. And we need to account for that. Yes, I agree with
And
you.
that's why they give the spur.
Over and above that, though, there could be potential monies available that we could account for, but it's still extra money there from 5 years of great rounds of golf being played that
Yeah.
we
Well, I
might be
can-
able to utilize.
When I do the budget, I'll run it over.
Okay, thank you. Josh, where did we, I'm really surprised that we got it down to 7.9. Where did that decrease come? I know like in one of the meetings when we were discussing the police station, you said it was gonna affect the levy, average levy 14 to 16%, now we're down to 7. So where did we find that?
yeah, going back to the debt service sheet that I hand out,
Mhm.
the police station debt service levy doesn't really hit until the 27 budget.
Okay. So when you said that, it wasn't gonna be initially.
That's not initially, it's when the levy hits, so that'd be the conversation that happens next year.
Okay,
And that's where that first question comes in, is there, if we know that it's gonna increase $1 million, do we want to increase it slightly this year to transition into that?
right, okay.
So that's what that first question was
And
about.
then where,
Originally it was gonna hit in 26, but because of the issues,
Right.
it's gotten delayed.
Yeah, because of when we're receiving,
right,
yeah,
okay.
if we would've bonded in May, it would've hit in 26, but because of the delay in the bonding, now it's not hitting till 27.
okay.
Or we can choose.
Yeah,
where it
I was
hits.
gonna say, there is a choice, actually, but, what is the percentage of the 396 that we, out of the general fund, that we're using to prepay those bonds, that bond interest initially?
The percentage of the 396.
The 396 that we're pulling out of our checking account to prepay those
Yep.
initial bonds, what is that percentage of our general fund.
Oh, so I think the question you're asking is if we were to levy for 396, what would the percentage be?
Right, well, I could say it that way, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Probably a better way to say it.
so roughly, if you look at it, every $50,000 equals 1%. And so if you look at 396, let's just call it 4 for easy rounding, you'd be looking at roughly 8%.
Okay. So that's where you were correct when you said during that meeting that it was gonna affect everybody 14 to 16%, or you thought that would be the initial.
Correct, yeah.
We
So,
prepaid that or used that.
yeah, so I'm seeing that, and I'll say as an effect on the overall levy, as we talked about residential tax impacts, yours might vary based on the valuation change in your property at that given time.
Okay, and what was that money put aside for initially? We pulled that out of,
So do you remember, there was a fund, sitting there for
Called city facility projects.
city facility projects, the maintenance and whatnot. And that was the fund that we dipped into when we bought the Parks building, so that we wouldn't have to borrow for it. And that is also where that money is coming from to make that prepayment.
okay. And did we use all of it? Was that what the total fund was,
I don't
396?
believe it's all being used, I'd have to look back and see exactly.
At the
what's in it.
end of 2025, we had 897,650 in that account. That's for all city facility projects.
Over and above, after we pulled the 396 out?
No, that's before.
Oh, okay,
I'm sorry, I
got you.
said that I said at the end of
Okay.
25 and I meant 24.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So I believe Robin said she had the 1% COLA change.
I do. All right. Now, any other numbers quick? Okay, so I know that you said just salaries. So just salaries in the general fund, I'm leaving out the enterprise funds because that doesn't impact the levy,
Correct.
is just under $17,000. So 16,900 would impact the levy to 6.66%. So
It's really insignificant.
So it's about
0.32.
$17,000 per 1%. Or for 1% COLA change is about $17,000.
correct, yes.
Okay.
But I do encourage us to consider that it'd be benefits as well, because PERA and FICA is the employer's responsibility associated with that 1%. So it would be more like a $20,000 savings for 1%, which brings it to 6.6%, so
But it's still not,
0.3.
that 50,000 is like the number in my head, if that's the 1%.
Yeah, so 50,000 is a 1% levy change. A
Right.
COLA change is about $20,000.
Right, so we're talking 0.5%.
So I guess we'll just to keep moving along as the night is getting long. One of the things to talk about are insurance benefits, and we don't yet have the health insurance numbers back, but there are a couple others we can talk about. Currently, the city offers a basic life insurance policy for employees, as well as a basic short-term disability coverage. The city offers voluntary or optional long-term coverage as covered by the employee, if that is something that they wish. Our current policy has life insurance costs annually at $3,000 to the city, short-term disability at a little over $11,000, and then the employee portion for long-term is a little over $7,000. We went out to bid to get some of those numbers. I've included those in your packet. And actually, since these numbers came out, I will, hats off to Gallagher, they went back and see if they could tighten some screws on a few of these people. In this packet, we are currently using, I believe it's Hartford, for our benefits. And within the memo, I do recommend switching over to MetLife, and the numbers have actually come down since this packet came out. So right now, we are paying about little over $14,000 for life and short-term disability for all city employees. And MetLife did come back and lower their short-term disability to roughly $4,500, I believe.
It was a $1,400 savings.
4,400.
14.
Yeah, so 4,400. So you'd be lower that $14,000 to about $9,000 for life insurance and short-term disability. And it would also then, the employees who have decided to pick up long-term disability their cost for that would also lower. But again, that doesn't affect the tax levy because the city doesn't cover that. The one thing that has changed legislatively, and you'll see those costs worked in here, is there's now a paid family medical leave act. Minnesota became one of, they're not the only state, but they did join the states that are requiring that to be paid. The current state rate, if we were to get that through the state, would be a total of $43,546. Cities and or counties are allowed to, or I guess even private businesses, since it affects everyone, are allowed to have a private carrier for that. MetLife was the one carrier that actually quoted us underneath the state rate, which is not common. I've talked to a number of LeSueur County cities as well as Scott County cities. A couple of them have had quotes underneath the state rate, but most of them have seen private quotes higher than the state rate. And so that particular benefit per se, if we were to go with MetLife and be totally city paid, it would be $41,071. That being said, the state does allow half of that to go back to employees pay, so the employee pays half. The employees can pay no more than half, but the city has the option, obviously, to pick up all of it if they so desire. So,
Do they know what other cities are doing?
yeah, so as I've talked to a few LeSueur County cities already, and most of them seem to be doing a 50-50 split in terms of what cities are doing. And that 50-50 split is currently worked into the budget.
Oh, is that, you did the 50?
Yeah. So along those lines, I guess, I would still recommend going forward with MetLife just in terms of that basic life and short-term disability, as well as at this point, due to seeing a cost savings, using them also for that paid Family Medical Leave Act. There would also be the benefit by keeping it all under one roof. If an employee actually had to utilize it, they're not having to bounce around between carriers. It sounds like you'd basically get into the MetLife benefit system and stuff would work. So ease of use, both for staff and for if an employee is unfortunate enough to need to actually access that, would be beneficial. Are there any thoughts on that?
I agree with just using one vendor.
Agree.
And it looks like MetLife, like if you reduced what'd you say, STD by
Reduce the
1,400?
STD by another $1,400.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go for the budget.
So that will see a savings in the budget because we have budgeted at current numbers. So, in terms of the life and short-term disability.
So can we move forward with MetLife to tell Gallagher and then?
I guess, yeah, I guess if that's where if the council feels all right with MetLife, are we able to tell Gallagher to let them know that we'd like to move forward with them?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Agree.
it's gonna save money.
So the other thing, part B in the memo there, talks about accident, hospital, and critical illness insurance. This, as an employer, we are able to offer these voluntary insurances. And I guess I would still recommend that they be voluntary, not paid for by the city. Basically, in short, accident insurance, most people, the most commonly well-known company is Aflac, and we went through Gallagher to get quotes again. A number of them came through. Speaking out of these companies right here, I believe it was MetLife, Mutual of Omaha, and the Standard and Hartford were the big ones to roll through. Basically, this insurances that employees can pick up on their own merit that will pay out in addition to any sort of health care that you may get. Most of them also provide some sort of wellness benefit that if you meet their criteria for doctor's visits and whatnot, that they can actually get paid back some of their premiums for that. And so I can certainly give you guys all the research you want on these various hospital and various insurance types and their benefits that push out, but MetLife did seem to be kind of the top I have that one in here. Oh, no. Hartford. So MetLife certainly provided the most benefits, but was also the most expensive, costing employees a lot more. As I looked through all of it, Hartford continually provided one of the lowest rates, and their big one sticking being they don't require a minimum carrier or minimum participant. So if I was the only one that wanted to participate, they would still allow us to pick up. Most of them had some sort of minimum employees if they were going to participate, and so.
Well, since it doesn't impact the budget,
It
it's
does,
kinda
it doesn't
good.
impact us, and this would certainly be a voluntary thing, but I didn't wanna make a decision without going through you guys as to an offering that we can give to city employees if they would like to participate in it.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
May I ask if it comes back that we,
Yeah.
if we have to go with one carrier for the ancillary, the ones
Oh.
Josh was just mentioning, the employee paid only, we can ask if we can go MetLife for the coverages you already talked about, and then Hartford for these employee electives. But if Gallagher tells us the vendor will only do ancillary if we're going with them with other coverages, do you support us moving forward with MetLife for that as well?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's,
Okay.
So I guess the last question I wanted to discuss tonight was just looking at the CIP, and I know we briefly discussed it. We certainly have the option of bonding for equipment in any given year versus levying for it. In the current budget, I have recommended levying for all of the equipment. And then also just going back to the equipment fund, is that something that the city wants to put into the equipment fund every year, the difference between $1 million and the debt service needs? Then some years we pulled out more than we put in, so it got basically drained the equipment fund plus a little levy. As I said, this year just happens to be on the other side where there would be a planned excess of $25,000 to be used in the next couple years, and if not, then certainly by the time we buy that fire truck, to help offset the cost of that in a few years. Are those still things that the city wants to continue doing?
I think it makes sense to do it that way so that we do hopefully build up that fund and are able to use those dollars for equipment as opposed to going out and bonding for them and paying interest on the bonding.
Yes, Bruce?
I'm kind of ambivalent about it. It's not a material number, $25,000 this next year. And we always seem to be focused on trying to keep the levy down, so you're actually increasing the levy unnecessarily sometimes.
In this instant, yes.
We've got these big issues coming in the future with the fire truck and some big other CIP things. I don't see us, I don't see it, my perception is the city council is not gonna agree to any major, big set-asides for the fire truck ahead of time as an example.
And yeah, and I don't think it's necessary, I'm not using the fire truck like that's what we're doing it for.
Right, it just comes to my
But I
mind,
just see
yeah.
that being a large enough purchase that
Right.
any funds like this, maybe it hits $48,000 3 years from now over the next couple of years, that the fire truck's big enough that it will certainly wipe out whatever is in there, but it would offset a little bit of spending towards that fire truck.
Steve, that fire truck, I think it's on the CIP like 550. Is that just the city's half? Okay.
To me, it's a matter of $20-some thousand either way, but.
Any other comments?
So oh, sorry.
I have some general comments. I don't know if it's appropriate to mention.
Yeah,
now
I
or
think we
later.
can. I was reminded that I need to see if you guys are all right with going for paid family medical leave for MetLife. Since that is, or, no, what?
Hello, it's me. Possibly for the next meeting, I'm not sure you want to make a decision on this now, but if you want to do 50-50 for the paid family medical leave cost, or if you want the city to cover the maximum amount of 0.44%. which would be higher in the case that MetLife is coming in less than the state total max of 0.88%. So there's.
I say, so if I understand it
1%.
correctly, the budget is currently worked out that the city's paying roughly $20,500.
Correct.
And, the city is able to pay up to the full $41,000. That would fully cover that cost, and the employees wouldn't cover any portion of it. And I believe you mentioned it real briefly, or asked the question real briefly. From what I've seen, most cities are splitting that cost between the, employer and the employee. But certainly just ask the question to make sure that we know where you guys want to go with it.
Is that part of the 8.16% increase in wages and benefits? Is that factored into that 8.16 right now?
Yes, sorry, I didn't catch the last number you said, but yes, it's factored into total wages and benefits.
Okay.
And I am in agreement that we budget for paying half of the PFML.
So yeah, that's, the state requires at least half
Right.
to be paid for by the city, so. If I'm seeing a bunch of head
Yeah,
nods.
I
50.
would say, yeah,
Okay.
do that for budget purposes, yes,
Okay,
in my opinion.
all right.
Thank you.
Yep. Your general questions, Bruce.
If it's appropriate, I'll just, some things. So I'm not sure if you're done with your comments, or you can make anything? Okay.
Yes, the agenda has been completed at this point,
Okay.
so.
These are just comments. The government building, like last year, the $100,000, my opinion would be to nix that.
Okay.
And either put that toward debt repayment, or if you want to reduce the levy, or use it in some fashion that way. So my thinking would be to remove it. But that certainly could be used for debt service or whatever. I think that a discussion or a thought should be given to reducing the EDA levy. I know we're going through strategic planning in that way, but we're getting, talking about the future, and some of that discussion is going, away from the discussion about doing another purchase of land, things like that. But in any event, the levy initially was created to establish executive director, basically. And we should just think about if we really need the levy at 75,000, or if it could go back to 25 or 50.
Okay.
That's a point I would like us to consider.
And I guess real quick, just my offhand thoughts. I wonder if that is one that's worth leaving in just for the preliminary, and then as we get through the strategic plan process, if EDA certainly doesn't need it, then that becomes an easy one to take 25 off.
Yeah, just like everyone else, everyone's got their turf.
Yeah.
And
It's,
there may be some cajoling involved in that, but I think it's something that the city council can discuss too, as we talk with them, as we go through the process too, about how we're gonna use our funds in the future. As I mentioned before, I think as this budget process, we should look about considering liquidating the ambulance separation or department or funding, since it's really become just a rental property to us now. We're not ever envisioning operating an ambulance ourselves anymore. And then I noticed in the parks area, I think it was, or the park board is considering a master plan for the city center property, but I hope that once we get past the, I would refer to it as a stormwater pond thing, and we got the details on that now, that we could get in a position of selling the part of the property. So when you talk about goals for the budget, I would like us to get in the position of either continuing to move the ball forward on the city, that land, whatever we decide to do with it. And part of the development process we went through before considered that different options, which included selling the property. So I would like that to be part of our thinking as we go through the budget too.
What about the property up on the hill?
That's been a kind of a,
What was the question, Chuck?
Property up on the hill.
Athletic property.
Oh. Yeah, we still own 38.9 and 8 acres up there. About your comment, Bruce, on the 30,000 for the, city center.
Yeah.
So we have a grant that is paying for the design of that pond. That
Yeah.
will take a chunk out of that 30. For the time being, we actually talked about it at Park Board, last week, that I don't have a final design number. Matt and I talked to the city engineer last week. I don't know what that 30,000 will end up needing to be to like finish up, we'll say, the design of that to include, future improvements beyond Pops and the pond. That might be parking, that might be, paving part of Third Avenue to a point. And then what does that leave for that property that you mentioned that could be sold on the north end? So I don't know what that number will be. It'll probably be under 20, but for the time being, we left that in at the $30,000 amount. So point well taken that,
So maybe I'm not really fully understanding, because when I read that, I thought, are they talking about maybe like playground equipment or something? Or you're just talking
it's like a
about
landscape
sport?
architect plan to build out the remainder of the ancillary items related to Pops. Again, could include a playground, could include a trail, could include some parking and paving of Third Avenue and maybe the alley behind
Okay.
the bowling alley.
Well, my concern, or not concern, but my hope would be that whatever that is, and I'm totally support us, developing it for that, but that it doesn't inhibit us to, as far as setting up boundaries or whatever for potentially selling the north part of the property.
No, actually, so yeah, you're correct. We're hoping that with the pond design, and then from that point, we'll have a very good idea, okay, we don't need the north 2 acres or whatever it might be. So you're correct, yes, you're correct. We want to get to that point. What don't we need? I think we'll be there shortly.
Or this is what we'll sell and this is what you can
Yep, yep.
part.
To your point about the other property that we own, the property on the hill, wouldn't call it. Yeah, it's currently flagged as athletic facilities, but I know over the last couple of years, we've even had just passing conversations internally. Is it worth looking at a second industrial park? We need to hold on to it. As of this point, it cash flows with what we lease it for. So there's certainly no urgency to sell it. But there may even come one day, like I said, when we want to develop it ourselves into something other than athletic fields, so.
Yeah, no, I understood that was cash flowing. I think they finally took the sign down, didn't we?
Brought it apart.
You'd have good. People, hey, you guys built that softball field yet? My question on the park thing, I see a sprinkler system from Memorial Park in the CIP.
Yeah, for the softball fields, that was to keep up the condition of the fields. They've been getting played much more for youth ball.
I was gonna say it's.
And we talked about that at Park Board last week, about the cost of putting that in. And Matt can probably speak more to the specifics of the benefits to that. But yeah, they've, at least for now, wanted to keep that in for your consideration. And actually, they wanted to expand it to kind of the play area. It would be between the playground and that northernmost field, kind of by the picnic shelter, as well to keep the turf up, because we're constantly reseeding and doing other maintenance out there. So it's really to try to ultimately cut down on labor time out there.
You mean where the tennis courts used to be? Is that the area you're talking about? No.
I don't know where those were. Maybe? No, directly north of where there's the drinking fountain and the picnic shelter, that area where there's just kind of a green area that
Yeah,
kids
the
play
tennis
in.
courts used to be there,
Okay.
way back when.
The more you know.
Yep.
Is
Yeah,
that
that
to me
area.
would be an ideal place for a splash pad?
Maybe.
That's just my opinion, but I'm not gonna go down that road now.
Are there any other general thoughts on what's in front of you guys right now?
If you could let me, I have to ask Ken this question again. Just remind me again, on the park board budget, how much is that funded through general fund and how much is through the development fees that we collect?
Yeah, so as I'm looking at the CIP, I believe inadvertently, as I'm looking at this, we had a breakdown from the park board working plan. A number of these items actually are not general fund, as I was looking at it here tonight. So I'll have to get that clarified. A number of these projects were intended to be paid for from, not for 2026, that is all general fund, but for the years beyond. Some of those items are actually from their dedicated funding.
So you're not saving money?
What do you mean?
That was an easy cut. I was able to.
Oh, no.
So, if we're looking at the right one, $110,000 for park board, that is all general fund,
That is the general fund ask for 2026.
okay?
But if you looked at 27, 28, and 29, a few of those projects are beyond the general fund budget.
I say, so remind me, Ken, because we started out, that was a little bit higher and the park board backed off some of those? Is
They
that
did
right?
for 26, that's correct.
What-
Again, moving items between their dedicated funds, they have to use their dedicated funds for expanded equipment. They can't use it for anything, including replacement. In this case, for next year, they cannot use that for replacement of a park sign. They could not use that for adding a sprinkler system to an existing field. So that was why that has to be general fund.
So none of these numbers here reflect dedicated fund spending.
Some of the items that are on here beyond 26 do include dedicated funding spending. That's why I'm saying,
Well, I'm just concerned about 26.
no, that's all general fund.
And so out of the general fund, have we historically put in 100,000?
Last year it was 78-ish, right in that number there.
What is the rule of thumb, or what is the thinking in the past? And I know the numbers, when I first started, were much lower, and it seemed to
I would
never be
say
a rhyme or reason to it.
probably for the first 15 years of my working here, it was around 20 to 40,000. And that in the past few years has jumped up between that 50 and $80,000 range. Last year, I think it was like just a tad under 79,000.
So what is the argument and why we should do $110,000?
The argument from the park board at this point was that I think we noted that we specifically could move the hockey rink, pickleball over to their dedicated funds, which would take 40,000 off the general fund, but that has limited dollars. We'll just take in case in point, I think they had about 350 in their dedicated funds. They committed up to 100,000 for pops, dropping their available money to 250. And if you look at a lot of these other projects, you know, whether it be splash pad or sidewalks and trails, whatnot, that doesn't go very far for their long-term plan. So the idea was to try to maintain that for these other large projects. They're all big projects for the park board, but
And I guess you could look at it from a city council perspective. How much do we want to invest in parks? Smaller amounts, larger amounts, obviously every community is going to do different, but
Right, but this 2026 is just giving us a partial picture, and actually, they're involved in a lot more than this because of the dedicated funding. Like the POPS contribution, that's significant, and that's
Correct.
also park-related too. So when you say, well, how much is city, we have to look at,
Yeah.
the broader picture of it too. And plus, we have to look at the overhead that we contribute to the maintenance of the park. That's also city contribution
Correct.
to parks. So, well, thank you. I think that's forthright because
Yeah, so
I seem to remember in the beginning, there's like 3 items and we'd argue about the 3 items always. And it was like, we're arguing about $30,000 and it's like,
right.
now the number's kind of just gotten bigger. That would be a number I guess I'd reflect upon. So has there been a study as far as sprinkler systems that's a need?
Yes, that was an identified through staff and discussed at the past 2 park board meetings regarding that. The last place we left it at was we needed to look at, I think this was a higher end model that would need less repair and maintenance on specifically the sprinkler heads. And we were looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, more middle range type system, a little closer to what there is at the current Memorial Park baseball stadium, and then adding in that green space area north of the picnic shelter. So we might be right back at the 35,000 that we had in the budget.
Obviously, then the 2027, that's, I shouldn't say that. I guess I assume that might be an error, but maybe not. there's a contemplation that the city's gonna be putting $500,000 into a splash pad?
So as we've been talking with the comp plan being wrapped up last year, we have the park survey, which will be wrapping up by the end of the week here. The park would begin working on their, we'll just call it the park plan, which will include eventually a 10-year CIP. This, right now, is just working from the old comp plan on projects they had identified, so we'll be updating that and putting that out for a 10-year time period. And again, trying to tie that back to future development and having majority of that paid for by dedicated park funds that will come from development.
So
But as of right now, we haven't had a sizable development that has brought that fund. I mean, like I said, we're about 250 in that dedicated fund available for these projects, which is not near enough to complete even these lingering projects from the old comp plan.
So I'll just circle back then to that city center master plan, that $30,000 anticipated coming out of the general fund.
Yep.
I had thought you said that was coming from a grant money for the stormwater thing.
What I was mentioning, so we had a grant pay for the design of a stormwater pond. They will not pay for things such as landscape architect related, such as landscaping, trails, paving of parking lot spaces, that type of thing.
Okay.
So that's what this was trying to get at. Chris was trying to do as much as he could related to the pond, and then we'll have to look back. Is 30,000 too much? Probably, but we don't know that number until he gets that pond design wrapped up, and then we'll revisit that.
So I know that we've had change in staffing, but do we have any resource to help with grant? Some of these seem like potential grant
Yeah,
applications.
our new planner, Evan and myself will be working on any grant applications. We are actually working on one for POPs for AV equipment, which is one of the items that they had noted that would potentially be cut out of their budget due to some of these additional costs that they've.
The one I sent in last year about for seniors and sidewalks and things, maybe, I'm not sure if that would fit some of that, but it sounds kind
We're looking at everything.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So did it sound like you guys were gonna look at your calendars then to see if you wanted to do a special meeting? We don't have to obviously set it right now, but.
No, let's set it now, or else I'm gonna go into some stuff, and then, because I'm cranky, and then I make Maggie cranky because I ask too many questions.
That's
and
right.
So we're
We're
gonna,
gonna have to change.
let's set an alarm.
we're gonna
I
have to
got a
change
whole
seating
list of
arrangements
things that I
around
wanna
here.
go through.
Well, next week, 25th to the 29th.
I like the 25th.
So the 25th, there is a utility commission meeting, just as an FYI, and,
Yeah, but that's at 3:30.
okay, yep, just making sure, just throwing it out there. Outside of the city, there's a school board meeting, but obviously that doesn't affect us, so.
I like Monday the 25th.
Yeah, and then we could do a special meeting after for Josh, and then we'd take care of that too. Are you with me? Everyone?
How early are you able to make it, Sean?
On that day, I'm early, so if we could meet right after the utilities, if you guys want, I could make it 4.
Do you wanna do, I guess,
I don't believe there's much on the utility agenda right now, so it should
Yeah,
just
and
be,
usually an hour, that's a long
this
meeting
we should
for
be done
us.
by 4:30.
we wanna say 4:30?
Yeah.
And we can put on the agenda 4:30 and/or shortly after the utility commission meeting.
Okay,
All
So
right,
both, we'll have 2 meetings that night then, my
Yep.
review as well as
we'll
budget,
do yours after, you know. we'll
after you
do-
guys have gotten real cranky.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah, we
Yeah,
want piss and vinegar, you'll get it.
okay.
Are there
Uh,
any financial documents or updates that you need to see?
Just if any more information comes in, that you get in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think
that we
just
can
like,
update this.
like today, you know, if you say, hey, we're gonna look at this, you know, what's, like, for example, 1%, it was what, 17,000 or $12,000, you know.
Okay.
When you look at, and you know that number in your head, you don't have to, you know,
So I should try to forecast what you might ask so I can have it in my head right away, instead of.
I like
making-
it. You're catching on how to play this game. All right, any other questions? We got a meeting set for Monday, the 25th at 4:30 for a second budget meeting, and hopefully we can iron out a lot of the questions. And then also a special closed meeting after that meeting, whenever it is, and
Wrap up my review.
wrap up your review and get that taken care of.
Would we look to try to determine the preliminary levy
Probably,
for the second?
so yeah, so my plan, if we can work that way, would then be have the second meeting in September when we set our preliminary levy.
Yes. Yep.
Okay?
All right. Any other questions? Not, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second by Maggie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right, thank you everyone for hanging out. This is always fun, isn't it? So Josh,